sin is fun, just like it is.
For a season.
For a season.
Yep.
I was getting to this point where I was unhappy. I wasn't restful. It wasn't peaceful anymore in my own soul.
Yeah.
Honestly, I began to remember verses I had learned in Awana.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Alongside Podcast, which is a production of Heritage Baptist Church. The purpose of this podcast is to come alongside followers of Christ in order to have thoughtful conversations about the gospel, culture, and the church. I'm your host, Mike Crump, and today I sit down with a dear friend who I have enjoyed working with here at HBC, yet at the same time, I have no doubt that she could hurt me if she really wanted to. If you've been at Heritage for any length of time, you have probably seen her or one of her amazing kids serving in some capacity here at the church. Of course, I am speaking of the one and only Kari Saunders. Welcome, Kari.
Hey.
It is so good to have you.
It's good to be here.
Now, we're going to jump into your testimony right now.
Okay.
Because I'm excited to hear it. I have not heard your full testimony. I've heard bits and pieces over our time conversing and chatting and all those kind of things, but I'm looking forward to kind of hearing how the Lord drew you to himself. So let's start at the very beginning, okay? Where did you grow up, and what's your family like?
All right, I was born in California, outside of LA.
Were you?
Actually.
Okay.
Yes, but I moved here when I was like 5.
Okay.
My dad was actually going to Liberty at the time, and basically have been here ever since. And we started going to I remember going to Thomas Road at first, and then we started coming here when I was in like 2nd grade or something.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. So I remember going to Grace Bible Camp. I remember doing all of those things.
That's so awesome.
Yep. And, you know, my parents love the Lord, and we came to church and did what we needed to do. And I got, quote unquote, saved when I was like 5.
Okay.
I remember having a conversation with my parents about it. I obviously, looking back now, had no idea really what I was saying to a degree, or I think more what it was is I believed it and I knew it in my mind, but it never really transferred to my heart.
Okay.
And I got baptized. My dad baptized me. This was before we came here.
Okay.
I mean, this was all at Thomas Road.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Got baptized in the whole 9. So growing up, thought I was saved, you know, and I distinctly remember it was about 8th grade. I went to public schools, and I remember the easiest way for me to describe it is having a choice to be cool and to hang out with those kids, or to be going against the flow and to love Jesus and to look different.
Gotcha.
And I chose the other. I chose to be cool.
Yeah.
I chose to not go upstream. And
was there something specific about that choice that kind of propelled you that way? Or was it really just that I want to be seen as cool? Was that really the driving force?
I think, and I do distinctly remember music as being the very first thing that kind of started to change my thoughts. And I have told many parents, like, what your kids listen to, especially as teens, it's important. Yeah. And I mean, we have a saying at our house, like, I know many people, garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
And it's not just music. It's not just, I like the beat. It's not just, their minds are being transformed by what they're listening to. And I remember 6th, 7th grade, like when I hit middle school, that just slowly started to, well, maybe it's okay to, you know, this. And I didn't realize it then. I had no idea. But looking back, that was the beginning. And then it literally, and I don't know that it was like this, one day I just decided I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to do this, but it was just this, I didn't want to take the stand, and I didn't want to be bold, and I didn't want to be obedient, and it didn't really matter to me, and I wanted to do this, and that's what it was. And the longer I went, the easier it was. And you know, when there were kids at my school that I know for a fact loved Jesus, and I, in this weird way, admired them and their courage, but that wasn't me.
That wasn't you.
That wasn't me.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do that. Mark Schweitzer actually was one of them.
Oh,
His
really?
mom and dad still go here.
Oh, wow.
But yes, he was one of them. Anyway, so and by the time I hit like 16 and I could drive, there was I didn't want to come to church. I came here because I was supposed to. If I could I think I was that kid that even like my parents thought I was here and I wasn't.
Oh, really?
I mean, yeah, like it was, I had no desire to do any of that. And then there were some things that happened here at the church in the youth group with the youth pastor that the Satan allowed to just use that as, oh, everyone here is hypocrites. This is all fake anyway.
Yeah.
I knew it the whole time.
Yeah.
And Satan just fed that.
Used everything that he could to kind of pull you away.
Absolutely.
You away. How was, just curious, having that mindset and being in the student ministries, okay? What was it like? I mean, because I know a little bit because I played the hypocrite for a while growing up, right? And so I would go to the things and do the things, but there was part of me that was like, yeah, I kind of believe this stuff, but it's not a priority to me. Were you there, or was it, I don't believe any of this stuff, I'm just here because my parents are making me come?
There was some of that, but at the same time too, I think if you would have asked me, I thought I was saved.
Okay.
I thought I was saved. I never could quite grasp the kids that, looking back, that loved the Lord. They were just these goody two-shoe tryhards to me.
Yeah.
And I never.
You didn't see it as genuine affection for Christ. You just saw them as, they're just. They drank the Kool-Aid and they're going down. They did. And I never could really get that. I know now why. Yeah. And there was no real animosity. That's not me. But I never really could figure any of that out. Yeah.
And I was here mainly because I was supposed to, and it wasn't just that my mom and dad, I knew I was supposed to.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, I need to be here, but I had no walk myself, there was nothing happening on the outside.
What was your relationship with your parents like at this point?
Rocky.
Was it?
I mean, it was rocky. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of, I did what I wanted to do. And God bless my parents. Me and my brother. Yeah. I mean, they loved us both through a lot and still do. And they, it was rough.
Yeah.
And, So
you came through and everything kind of blew up in the youth group, and you saw that as a means of further separation of anything like the church. Where did you go from there?
I remember, I think it was my senior year. I was older in my grade. So by my senior year, I was already past 18. And so I left. I moved out and I moved in with my boyfriend.
Okay.
And left, had no desire to go to church, barely finished high school. And barely because I just quit going and was that truancy kid. And just did what I wanted to do from the time I was, truly from the time I was 18 until probably 22. 22, 23. Wasn't at home, did the whole scene of anything and everything you could think of.
Yeah.
That was me. And, and the Lord, through that time, and I look back, and the one thing that stands out to me is how God protected me. And there were many times I should have died.
Wow.
Many times in many different ways, and or I should have been in jail. And dogs sniffing the car, the whole nine, and you look back and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Like that, and I'm laughing it off then.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And
you didn't see it then.
No.
Yeah.
And the Lord definitely protected me in that time. But at the same time I can see now how he was drawing me to himself. And it was, even then, if you would have asked me if I was saved, I would have said yes. And it took years of just this. I had fun, and sin is fun, just like it is.
For a season.
Yep. And I was getting to this point where I was unhappy. I wasn't restful. It wasn't peaceful anymore in my own soul.
Yeah.
And I began honestly, I began to remember verses I had learned in Awana.
Really?
And I can do all things through Christ and all these different verses. And I'm like, all right, I got to a point where I wanted to quit smoking.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do these things that I knew I wanted to quit doing the things I knew I shouldn't be.
Gotcha.
So I moved. And at the same time, my parents redid their basement and basically said, you can come home and live in the basement and go to Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm going to take you up on that.
Yeah.
So I came home. I started going to Liberty and still just wrestling through things. And I remember I was in, he's a professor at Liberty, Ed Townsend.
Yeah.
I was in like an Old Testament, New Testament class for him. And I ended up getting pregnant while I was at Liberty. And I remember being in my parents' basement taking classes, I guess online at that point because I couldn't go to school there.
Okay.
I guess the rules were like that then. I don't know.
Gotcha.
But I just remember sitting in the basement, going through Old Testament and New Testament, pregnant, life falling apart to a degree, and just the Lord still using these old ragtag VHS tapes to show me truth.
That's amazing.
And to remind me of truth. And it was just like, so I got to a point where I was like, all right, I got to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
I got to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to know how to tap into this strength. How do I quit doing these things? How do I know I can, I know it's there, I know it's possible, but why can't I do it? I scheduled a meeting with Dr. Kroll. You know me, if I need answers, I'm going to go get them, right?
Yeah.
So I scheduled a meeting with Dr. Kroll. I remember going in, sitting down in his office. We're talking, and he starts spitting out the Romans Road.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew what he was doing. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like, I know what you're doing. I was like, you can't do that to me.
I've been taught this. I've been down this road before.
Yeah, no. And I remember walking out of his office so mad.
Really?
I was so mad that he had the audacity to say that to me.
That he would question your salvation?
I guess.
Yeah.
And it was just like, what? So it was probably 2 more years before I got saved.
Wow.
And just in that was, but God bless Dr. Kroll, because in that was the moment where that thought of, am I? Like as I started,
the seed was planted.
That, hey, you might want to rethink this whole thing.
Yeah.
And it took a couple more years before I was really ready to just submit to the Lord.
Yeah.
And in that time, Caden was born. In that time, I met Tony. All of these things happened. And I just remember, I look back now and how how the Lord never gave up on me.
Yeah.
How he was faithful, how he loved me, how he brought the right people into my life at the right time, and that he was relentless, really. I mean, like looking back now, it took a long time, but I am so thankful that he did. And I know now that I'm saved, and I know now that that I'm going to heaven, and I know now that he is the Lord of my life. And I know the difference.
Yeah.
And I honestly can't even tell you a date. I can't tell you. I know I was in my room, and I could narrow down the year by when Caden was born. Like I know I was after he was born, but it was literally just this. I can't do this on my own anymore. There's a part of me that doesn't even want to.
Yeah.
You have to change that part of me. You have to help me to want to. You have to help me to do this. I'm tired. I'm tired of this, and just help me.
Yeah.
And I love you, and I'm sorry. And like that was it. Like it was just this in my mind with the Lord. Just I'm done.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I know now.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that I didn't die.
Yeah.
But because I really did think I was.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's always, even in my own kids' lives, like in teens, I have that heart for, I don't want anybody to ever think that they are and they aren't.
Yeah.
And like, not that we ever can know that, you know what I'm saying, for someone else. But I know how scary that was down the road when I figured that out.
Yeah.
And
there's the other side of it too, that there is a joy that comes with the comfort of knowing you are in Christ. And the ambiguous nature of living, am I there or am I not, which is kind of the morality tale, right? It's like, well, if I do these things, if I quit the smoking and I do this and I do that and I go, then maybe things will be okay. It's different than I am in Christ. I am sealed in him by faith, by his grace, and he is with me. And man, I love it, Kari. That just does my heart so much joy to hear that. And I think one thing, if there was something to share, maybe even with parents who have kids who are maybe walking in similar fashion, who are in those difficult seasons, or maybe they are far from Christ, the steady love and presence of your parents seems to have been and it had an impact on you. But what would you say to those parents who maybe they have a child who is in a similar situation that you found yourself in during that time?
I would say, don't give up. I would say that the word doesn't come back vain. I would say, keep speaking truth. I think everybody has I think I'm a little bit more of a tough love kind of person, and I think everybody's line for that is different.
Yeah.
But I also think, and I think the Holy Spirit just kind of leads everybody in that own way, but you need to keep loving them, but also keep telling them truth and helping them to, in essence, I had to be responsible for my own decisions.
Yeah.
And I had to leave because I had a kid, and I had to do these things like, I had to face all that. And in reality, my world had to start to fall apart for me to finally go, I can't do this on my own. When everybody was helping me and sin was fun, I didn't need Jesus. I didn't think I needed him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when it was like, oh my goodness, what is going on? It's you finally start to look up because also all of the, truth, like, it.
Yeah.
Like it's all there. The parents keep teaching it to keep taking them when they're older, elementary school, middle school, and they don't want to go, and it's a fight, and I don't feel like taking them. They don't take them.
Yeah.
Like they need to hear truth, and whether you think they're listening, what they are, and the Holy Spirit will use all of that down the road.
Amen.
And just keep praying for them.
I do. There is a sense, into even just what you just said, of the story of the prodigal that we read in Scripture, that there's this rock bottom, where he found himself even looking at the food of the pigs and going, man, I would love to eat that. But he did recall his father and the truth of his father, and it propelled him to then go to his father. Now, he underestimated the love of his father, but he at least moved in that direction. So you're so right in that as parents, we have not just a responsibility to share with our kids the truth. I think that's key, but it is also for their own good that they hear it over and over and over again, because it doesn't return void, and the Holy Spirit is so powerful. The other passage that comes to mind in your story is also Matthew 5, and that just, blessed are those who mourn. And you got to that point again where it was just kind of like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And
I think everybody was mourning. Mom was mourning. Dad was mourning. We was all mourning at that point. So
it was mourning everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So I'm sure your parents were excited to see this transition as you came to know the Lord, as He brought and drew you closer and closer to yourself. Did you see that relationship heal over time?
Yeah, I did. I know I had probably some humbling conversations about, even just, I'm sorry. Like it was this, you realize how selfish you actually were. And, I'd rather go get high than come to Thanksgiving, or I needed to get high first before I went to Thanksgiving. And like those just hurts that I'm like apologizing for those and being like, I was an idiot and I really didn't know what was, but I did. And so, yes, and things healed, and can you imagine? Like they were just happy that I was where I needed to be in the Lord at that point. Yeah. And funny story. So, and this involves Tony too. But at one point we were trying to find a church to go to, and we tried every church besides Heritage.
Really?
So it was one of those. I still had to, I will go anywhere but Heritage. And, I mean, we tried every black church, every white church, every woohoo church. I mean, we went everywhere.
Yeah.
And even in the week after week, and even in those moments, there would be a conversation that Tony and I would have about, because at that point, Tony wasn't even saved.
Okay.
And so we would have a conversation within the week about God and who he is, or I would be trying to tell Tony what I knew. And even though I was young in the faith at that point or whatever. And, I don't care where we went. That's what they talked about.
Really?
Week after week after week, and it's like, man, this is weird. But it was super neat. And then finally, our car broke down, and I needed a ride to church. And of course, at that, so my mom and dad, I'll give you a ride to church. And I was like, And so they brought us here.
Yeah.
And Dr. Kroll was doing the role of the man and the role of the woman. And it was like a 4 or 5 part series.
Yeah.
And that was the first week. And we went. And every week, Tony and I kind of looked at each other afterwards and was like, does he like this one? Do I like this one? Like, are we going to go here? We looked at each other and had a conversation that Sunday. And it was like, well, we got to go back and hear what he says next. And we went back.
Yeah.
And we went back and we went back and we've never left.
Wow.
And it was just, it was really
awesome.
neat.
And what year was that? Do you remember?
This would have been 07.
Okay.
06 or 07. Okay. Yeah. And Tony, if you ask him, I think this is hilarious, but he, this was when we were meeting in the gym and Dr. Kroll met everyone as they walked out up the stairs.
Yeah.
And I came in and he saw me. Like, this was the first, he saw me. And it was one of those, like, I think I said hi. I don't remember exactly now, but it was one of those, like, yes, I'm here. Praise the Lord. Yeah. And I introduced him to Tony, and he was just my boyfriend at the time, but I introduced him to Tony. And, this is before church. So as we're leaving church, he, goodbye. Glad you were here, Tony. Goodbye. Tony thought it was the biggest thing that he remembered his name. Really? And that he knew who he was. And I'm like, dude, you were the only black guy in the whole service. Of course he knew. And he was just like, shut up. But little things like that. Tony was yearning for these things and needed these things, and God was revealing himself to him in these ways as well. And I think that's part of, like, God knows exactly what each person needs in that moment to bring you to him. And he is faithful to do that, but yet at the same time can orchestrate everybody together. And he is just so powerful and so awesome and faithful. Yeah. And it's really neat.
Yeah, I think that word faithful truly captures a lot of it. Where many of us may write off someone or whatever it may be, God does not. And he is faithful to bring about his plan. And Kari, I'm glad you're here at Heritage. And now you have not only did you start coming to Heritage, you guys got involved in different ways. And now I know you, as long as I've been here, you've been involved in, like, student ministries. Did you start somewhere else before you, as far as involvement at the church, or did you?
I think I helped in children's ministry first. I mean, it was one of those, like, my kids they were 8, 6, 4, and 2 when we started going here.
Gotcha.
And so we just kind of were involved there. And I've, coached Awana Games for a long time and helped with the Oasis, and we did Judgment House. But mostly it was in... did Blast Zone, and then kind of as the kids started to move into youth, it was like kind of moved into there, a little bit. And Kamari's 22 now, so that's been a little while, but and even the role there in youth has changed a little bit, but I do enjoy youth, and just like I said, I think it was such a not meaningful. It was a impactful, or like that time in like I said, I specifically remember the pendulum switching and like I think it's important, and I love being able to have those conversations with teens and really helping them figure out what they're figuring out what they're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Like, and helping them
provide clarity and understanding. And
because sometimes they don't even know. And I mean, we
it's like I'm feeling this way, but I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, not too long ago, not only were you, with student ministries, but you actually came on staff as director of Adventure Kids Junior, kind of our temporary director. And that was when we were coming back from COVID, trying to get back into the swing of things. First and foremost, I would just say you knocked it out of the park when you came in.
Thank you.
For those who don't know, we were opening things back up with all the classrooms. And at the time, this was after VBS and everything, and Xana had done such a great job previously, but she was stepping away. And Amy and I were looking at basically this, nursery and preschool, and we were just weeping, ashes and sackcloth and stuff like that, just because it is a beast to deal with so many volunteers. It is both a joy and also just a headache at times dealing with so many volunteers. And so we were working all this out, and then they opened up a position, and you stepped into that position. And man, we were so happy to have you there. Not just because you helped alleviate a burden, but because we just truly enjoyed spending time with you.
Yeah, I agree. It's the same.
So what was it like in that position? Because it was kind of a different kind of feel for you. So what was your initial thing when you stepped into that position?
It was different, and I think. And Trey at the time, so like Kyler and Trey are like 8 years apart. So and it had been COVID for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So I think Ashley Fox and I were actually just talking about how it's like you had a kid in like N2 or N3, and then all of a sudden, they're in force. And it was just like,
you missed it.
You missed it all. And that's kind of what had happened. So like I didn't feel like I knew a lot of those parents really well yet, that age. And so that part, just getting to know parents and getting to know that was, I don't want to say it was over, it was neat.
Yeah.
Like, and I honestly enjoyed that more than I thought I would. Like, I'm very much a check the box, let's get it done. And so, but I really enjoyed getting to know the volunteers and praying for them and knowing, where they were at in life and what they needed. And I really, really enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah.
But the whole administrative side of it and all of the things that needed to be done to make it work, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And I think looking back as my time kind of ended, I knew that I was gifted administratively. Later on in life, I figured, could kind of figure that out. But I never really felt like I was using it for the Lord. And yes, I have 6 kids. I homeschool. I help with a, homeschool athletic association. Like I do these things, but and even in youth, like I didn't really I don't know.
You weren't able to walk in that gift maybe to the fullest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was. And I realize now that I am so thankful that the Lord allowed me and that y'all allowed me to be able to be in that role, because it was very fulfilling for me. And it was very much like I enjoyed it very much, and it was at a point in my life and a time in my life and in my just with my family and everything going on that I just needed it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I needed it until it was ending.
Yeah.
And then it was like, but I'm very thankful for it, for the friendships that I made, for just the opportunity to be able to help the body of Christ. And there's something special about being able to use your gifts and talents for the Lord in the church and for the body.
Yeah.
And it was really special, and will always be a very special time for me.
Yeah.
But I really did enjoy it.
And I think, and I keep going back to this word, and you've mentioned several times, it's just the faithfulness of God, because it's amazing to me how He has put the right people in place at the right time to help us to continue to move forward in His plan. And so you were one of those key people that came in to a time when there was just a desperate need, and your gifts were on display. Because I remember you just wrangling this whole mess that Amy and I were just weeping over. And you were able to kind of wrangle it to the point where it made sense and it was functioning. It was awesome. So thank you for that time and for all you did there. It was fun. We had a good time.
It was fun. And I'm telling you, y'all were great teachers.
Man.
I loved it for sure. Getting to know y'all better. And we had a good time. So, definitely. Yeah.
So what can we do as far as prayer? How can we be praying for you, for your family during this time?
Life is definitely changing.
Yeah.
And, having kids from 5 to 22.
It's quite the range.
They're quite the range. So there's lots of different things that are happening.
Yeah.
But just being the best parents that we can be to each kid in the way that they need it is challenging.
Yeah.
And just pray that we do that. Pray that we continue to work and put our relationship above, Tony and I, above them.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard sometimes, and maybe especially for a mom, maybe more so for a mom, but that has to be a priority.
Yeah.
And I think we all feel when that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So that, and just I pray for my kids individually. There are a lot of them are getting to where they got to figure out what they want to be when they grow up.
Oh yeah,
and that's that's a
those big questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just yeah.
Okay. Well, I would encourage those who are listening, be in prayer for Kari, for Tony, for their family. And if you see them around church, give them a big hug.
Yeah.
Big
sure.
old hug.
Yep.
Or at least just say hey.
Say hi. I'll take a hug.
Yeah,
I'll
you'll take a hug. Okay. All right. Well, with that, it is time to go on to our last question.
Okay.
Which is from my random deck of questions.
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
Are you ready for that? Did you even know this was coming?
I did not.
Okay. All right. So, some people know, some people don't.
Okay.
Usually I can tell who actually listens to the podcast by that. So I've got this deck of cards. It's just random questions of all sorts of nature. And I'm going to pick one and pose it to you.
Okay.
How's it sound?
Sounds great.
No, that's morbid. We're not going to do that one.
Oh, you just need to throw that card away then, apparently.
Okay, this one's it's another one that deals with dying, but it's more interesting. If you were to die and come back as a person or thing, what would you think it would be? Not in the reincarnation sense, but what would be fun to I guess come back as?
That would be reincarnation.
Well, it would be reincarnation, but we don't believe in reincarnation.
We don't.
This is purely fantastical.
I got you. Oh, wow.
Or if you could morph into some
Something
sort of
else.
other thing or creature or something.
I would say maybe some kind of bird. I just
Yeah.
think it would be really cool to be a bird and to be able to go anywhere and see everything and be super fast. And
I thought about a bird too. That's exactly where my mind went.
Yeah.
Was, because just the ability to be able to fly.
and the perspective, like what a different perspective they have
Yeah.
of just the earth and creation in general than we do down here. And like, I think it would just be neat to see a different perspective like that.
I agree. See, great minds do think alike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Kari, thank you so much for joining me for this podcast episode. And
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have you on for some other great conversations.
Great conversations.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, this has been another episode of the Alongside Podcast. For more details on Alongside, including show notes, past episodes, and more, you can visit alongsidepodcast.com. Also, wherever you may be listening to this, make sure you leave a 5-star review so others can hear about Alongside and be encouraged in their faith. I'm your host, Mike Crump. Thanks for listening, and we hope that you will join us next time as we continue to come alongside other followers of Christ in order to have thoughtful conversations about the gospel, culture, and the church.